Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell, and welcome to another episode of Thriving in Uncertainty, the show where we dive into the steps, discuss the strategies, everything that you need to know to turn all of this uncertainty into your competitive advantage. And today we are going to talk about one of the most important words I think there is out there if you want to thrive in an uncertain marketplace, and that is accountability. And we have the accountability guru expert with us today, Sam Silverstein. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Hey, Mary, it's great to be here.
Well, I am excited to have you here. So for those audience members that don't know you, tell us a little bit about Sam Silverstein.
Oh, wow. Well, we don't have enough time for all that, but father of four, husband of one. I used to own a window and door manufacturing business, built that up, sold it off to a Fortune 500 company. For the last 28 years, I've been researching, writing books, working with clients all about how to build accountability into their organizations, helping people build it into their lives. And then the ultimate goal, my mission, is to build a more accountable world. We do that through accountable people and accountable organizations.
So why accountability? I mean, how did you come to land on the word accountability?
Well, that's a great question. And so for the first 10 years of my career after I sold my manufacturing company, I was doing everything because I had an MBA. I'd run this business. I knew sales, I knew manufacturing, I knew marketing, and I just was doing everything. And then none of my friends, people like you, peers in the industry, couldn't recommend me because they didn't know what I did. So I stopped. Literally, this was the impetus. I stopped and I looked at what I did and I said, what's the real core, the foundation of who I am and what I align with? And it came back to accountability, because what we've discovered is this: if you want greater leadership in your organization, it's going to go through accountability. If you build a culture that inspires and prioritizes accountability in an organization, you're going to have better communication. You're going to have better teamwork. There's going to be more collaboration. You're going to have innovation, creativity. It's going to be a safer place to work. Your employees are going to be more highly engaged. They're going to be more productive, and you're going to make more money. It all flows back to accountability. We document it and we help organizations step it out. And I just feel like this is what's missing.
So I'm sort of guessing that accountability would be a word that organizations want and individuals want, as long as you're holding other people accountable. But it's maybe, I don't know, I feel like it's a word sometimes that gets some negative connotation. Years ago, I wrote a book that had the word responsibility in the title. And I remember the publisher saying to me, you can't put responsibility in the title. Nobody wants to be responsible. Did you get any pushback like that when it came to accountability?
Well, I've just finished my 11th book, and I'm blessed that my publisher is behind me 100%, because we just agreed on what the 12th book was going to be. He loves when I put the word accountability in the title, but I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah. And so here's the challenge. The challenge is that everything we've been taught about accountability is wrong. Accountability is not a way of doing. Accountability is a way of thinking. You don't hold people accountable. You inspire accountability in people by being accountable to them. And so accountability is not punitive. It's not standing up and saying, oh, it's my fault, I messed up. No, that's your responsibility, to go back to that word.
Yeah.
We're responsible for things. We're accountable to people. Accountability involves a relationship with people. And so there's a real positive side to accountability that people don't understand. And in stepping that out, helping people understand that and helping organizations build it into their culture, once they discover this, their world changes. And so on the surface, do people kind of cringe? Yeah. I got a call from somebody once, had breakfast with 3 CEOs. He says, Sam, you're just not going to believe this. There were 3 CEOs at the table. The A word came up, and one of the CEOs said, I have more accountability than I know what to do with. I have a wife and I have an assistant. I don't need any more accountability. Now, that CEO gets it all wrong. That person didn't understand that they're both accountable to and accountable for the people in their organization. And if you're shirking away from that, then what happens is you're not really being a great leader. So accountability is really a very powerful element.
So where do we, first of all, I'm curious as to why why we aren't accountable. Like, I imagine that you are pretty busy because accountability is something that seems to be lacking in our world. And I guess I want to start with why.
So it goes back to what we've been taught, that accountability is punitive. So here, let's dissect this. Accountability is keeping your commitments to people. There's two types of commitments. There's tactical commitments, which are about things. There's relational commitments about people. Tactical commitments produce results, and that's productivity. Great, we need productivity, but that does not yield accountability. Relational commitments, on the other hand, build relationships and inspire accountability. And when we have accountability, we also get an increase in productivity. So it's win-win. So what happens is people think they see accountability as a negative rather than being a relational commitment, a commitment to live the values, a commitment to it's all of us, which means if you fail, I fail. If you succeed, I succeed. A commitment to stand by you when all hell breaks loose, a commitment to tell the truth, a commitment to a good name. There's 10 of these, and they're all positive. And if the leader is making and keeping these commitments, unspoken commitments, what happens is they build relationship with the people, and those people would rather die than let that person down, that leader down. And when you have a team of people like that, they will move mountains to make your organization successful. But if your team feels like, well, the leader's out for him or herself, I'm on my own, and then you're lacking loyalty, then they're not motivated to go above and beyond. So it starts with the leader. It's inspired in people. It's not, you do not hold people accountable. You help them be accountable, and you help them through your commitment to being accountable to them.
So it sounds like accountability is very much a foundational piece of leadership. It's kind of like, I think about going into corporations and they might have the latest technology. They might have a new sales process. They might restructure the organization 3 or 4 times. But if you don't have this piece, none of the other pieces matter. Would that be correct?
Well, you're one of the smartest people I know, and you nailed it. I'm not saying that facetiously. I say that very sincerely, Meredith. And so here's the thing. It's not a foundational piece. It is the foundational piece. And I've been for years telling people accountability is the highest form of leadership because it's about people. It's about connecting to people. It's about supporting people. And so leaders that focus on the bottom line and say that their people are important and we couldn't get here without you, but they're focused on the bottom line, they're missing the boat. If the leader focuses on the people and make sure that the people are successful, make sure that the people are achieving their dreams, make sure the people are if the leader is leading those people to their fullest potential, then what happens is you have an army of people who will focus on the bottom line. But a lot of leaders have trouble getting out of the way. It's just bottom line, results today. And so if you want results today, take out a whip your people. But if you want they'll work their tail off, but then they're not coming back tomorrow. But if you want long-term sustainability in your culture, in your organization, then you want to create an army of people who love working together, who love the organization, who love their leaders, who love the clients. And there are companies like that out there, but they're not all the companies. And so it has nothing to do with the product or the service. It has to do with what the leader has said is acceptable in their culture.
So where does accountability lay in this uncertain world that we're living in? I imagine it was always important, but 2020 hits and our world gets completely shaken up. We thought that 2021, I don't know, we all thought we would celebrate New Year's and life would be great, but we seem to be living in almost a more dramatically uncertain world. Maybe we're a little bit more used to it, but I don't know. So if uncertainty is one of the biggest challenges facing business today, where does accountability fit?
So that's a great question. And what happens is this, what I've seen with my clients, existing clients and new ones that have come to me in the past year, the organizations that have mastered accountability, meaning it's inspired in their culture, the organizations that have mastered accountability adjusted quicker and made better adjustments to the challenges, the uncertainty that they were facing because of things that are out of their control. Most organizations that weren't in that position, they struggled because they didn't know where to focus. You see, an accountable leader never focuses on the things that they cannot control. They always focus on what they can control. And so those organizations that had figured out what their values were and were living the values and created a culture where people cared about each other and wanted to work together, and they knew that the leader had their back, those people busted their chops to make it work. I had one client, he goes, Sam, it's business as usual. We're just working it from home. And I said, no, it's not business as usual. Your people that are now working from home have their spouses there. They have their children there. There could be, their parents could be there. And if we don't take the time to get to know what their needs are, what their challenges are, and serve them, they're not going to be in a position to serve the organization, because families come first. Mm-hmm. And so the leaders that better understood that going in, that better had a grip on how to be accountable to their people and for their people, they have mastered this situation so much more fluidly. So uncertainty comes our way, but through the practice of building accountability, you learn certain things and you have certain knowledge that allows you to better handle that uncertainty.
So, we've talked a lot about leaders being accountable. If I'm out there as an individual or even as a leader, where do I start? I mean, where does accountability begin, and how do I A, know if I am accountable, B, start to move towards becoming more accountable?
Well, several things. One, we do have a real simple free accountability assessment at amiaccountable.com, amiaccountable.com. And that'll give you insight into how you stack up on those 10 commitments of accountability. That's a great place to start. We also, when we work with organizations, we actually have a cultural assessment that measures accountability inside the organization. It's pretty in-depth, and it's pretty powerful in the information that it yields. But the leader, which is the question that you had asked, where does the leader start? They need to look at how they're perceived by their people. And this assessment is one way to do that. They need to be bold enough to say, you know what, I don't have it all figured out. I'd love to know how I'm seen by my people, whether they see that I'm committed to them as people, because that's where accountability is born. But it's the leader that says, we're going to have an amazing culture, and I'm going to bust my chops to make sure that we have an amazing culture. If you feel that way, you might be on the right track. If there's a set of values that the company has identified that is being lived, and your mandate is that we all live the values or we don't stay here, then you're probably going to be on the right track. If those values are lived differently by different people at different parts of the organization, then there may be some gaps that we need to look and fill.
So when you go in and you work with an organization and they say, Sam, we're ready to build an accountable culture, what are the challenges and things that you're seeing they're faced with that is driving them to want to build an accountable culture?
Fear that if they say we're going to do it this way, we're going to lose people. And you go back to before the pandemic, unemployment basically was zero. I mean, in most markets, it was just zero. And I can't tell you how many leaders I said, why do you let this person stay in the organization? They're not living what you say your values are. They're not contributing to the culture. They're taken away from the culture. Actually, if you allow them to stay not living the values, then you can't say those are your values. You're actually lying in that situation. I said, why do you let these people stay? Well, it's hard to find good people. Well, that's a fear mentality. That's coming from scarcity, not abundance. The reality is the accountable leader knows that they have a responsibility to build an organization that's good enough to attract great people. And so that's why there's a manufacturing company in Texas that's in 4 cities in Texas that even when unemployment was zero, what would happen is if they had a job opening, they had 40 to 100 applications for a job. Now, why would 40 to 100 people want a job at a company? Because it's an amazing place to work. And come on, Meridith, you and I are going to start a business this afternoon. We need 20 people throughout sales, manufacturing, the front office. We want to build a successful company. I'm in charge of HR. You just tell me, do I go out and get the 20 best people in the marketplace, or should I just get 20 mediocre people? Who do you want me to hire?
20 best people, Sam.
Of course. So, if you build an organization that attracts and retains the best, then you have an unfair competitive, I'm not going to say unfair, you have a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
But why aren't companies there? Because the leaders aren't accountable to their people. The leaders don't say the culture matters here. The leaders don't say we have a set of values that are real and we're going to live these values regardless, because they're worried about what happens this week. They're not taking the long-term view, and they don't understand the power and the value of building an organizational culture that prioritizes accountability.
So if accountability is so good for us, why don't more companies, why don't more leaders gravitate towards it?
Well, I think they lack the comprehension. This goes back to the fear factor. They don't.
Yeah.
And you know what? A lot of leaders, Meredith, you're not going to believe this, but a lot of leaders really have no idea what they believe. They don't know what they believe about a whole host of things. They don't have clarity on what their values are. They don't have clarity on what their unique purpose or their mission is individually. And if you don't know it individually, you can't have it as an organization. Now, they might think they know what it is, but if you say you value integrity and you allow me to stay in the organization and I'm living with integrity, and you allow James to stay in the organization and he has no integrity, then you don't know what you believe, because you said you value integrity, but you're allowing one person to stay who has it and one who doesn't. And so there's a disconnect. What do you really believe? And so leaders need to be willing to make decisions based on what they should know is truth and step those out. But if we're worried about what happens if the stock price dips between 2 and 205 this afternoon, we're never going to make the best long-term sustainable decisions for our business. And so leaders fall into that trap, and that's something they need to move beyond.
But how do you get the courage to move beyond that? I mean, in an uncertain world, like I hear everything you're saying, and I think that was definitely a challenge that was easier to meet until you went into an uncertain marketplace. And whether we like it or not, the moment you get into an uncertain marketplace, you have the fear of just keeping the company in business. The fear too, if you're not the very top leader, of just losing your job or not losing your job. And so how do you initiate that courage in the first place?
So what you just made my case, Meredith. All these people in your organization, they're fearful of losing their job because the leader did not create the environment that told them, this is what we believe here as an organization. These are our values, and we're going to live these values. And as long as your decisions connect with the values, you'll never get in trouble for a decision that didn't connect positively to the bottom line. And so that's why you go back to your other question. In times of uncertainty, the organizations where the leader understood this and built the kind of organization that we're talking about prior to the problems, prior to the uncertainty, they fared during that time significantly better. The challenge is there's so many leaders that have only seen this done one way, and they think that's the way you do it. You hold people accountable. So I'm going to hold you accountable. This is what holding someone accountable looks like. Nobody wants to be held accountable. What people want is they want leaders that are accountable to them and for them and will make sure that they succeed. Because if I know that you care about me to that degree, Meredith, I'm going to show up like crazy for you. I'm going to be there late at night if that's what it takes. And when we go home during the pandemic, I'm going to work from my home and I'm going to figure it out. But those leaders that are so focused on what people can do for them, that are using accountability as a way of manipulating people to get things done, they don't get it, and they're not going to get it. Now, here's the sad truth is this. There are leaders that are accountable leaders that get it. There are some that just never had a good example. And when they hear you and I talk, when they read one of my books, when they read one of your books, when the light bulb comes on and they say, you know what? Maybe there's another way. And then there's a lot of people that think they have it all figured out. They're all that in a bag of chips. And let me tell you, they might be making money. And so their behavior is rewarded because they are profitable, but they're not near as profitable as that company that has 40 to 100 people waiting in line when there's one single job opening. That organization, their stock value goes up double digits every year, even when the housing market is in total disarray and turmoil. And so you can build a company that's going to be profitable this week, this month, but if you want to build long-term sustainable success and profitability, the only way to get there to the best of your ability is going to be through the lens of accountability.
Sonny Jacks, who's listening to us right now, just commented with a great little quote there it's called intimidate to motivate, and it never works.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it will work for 5 minutes, people will jump when you bang something together loud enough, they will jump, but eventually they're not going to hear that, But
and they're not going to, and even if they do stay with you, they're not giving you everything they've got.
Exactly. And so I'm sitting down with a group of leaders, of 24 leaders from a petrochemical company that has about 2,500 people. And we were talking about the values and I don't know, we got into a conversation and someone started laughing. And I said, what's so funny? Well, we were talking about Joe. What's the deal with Joe? Well, Joe never does his work. Really? Yeah, no. I said, so what happens when you need to get something done? Well, we just go into Joe's office, we take it out of his inbox and we do it. Oh, okay, great. Do you also get Joe's paycheck? Well, no. Why do you keep Joe here? Basically, you're saying in this company, you don't have to do your job. You just have to make sure you leave everything accessible for someone else to come get it and do it, and you'll still get your paycheck. That's what they're saying they want their culture to be. You see, here's the deal. Leaders always get the culture they deserve.
Mm-hmm. That's
now,
a great quote. It
might be kind of harsh sometimes, but that's the truth. If you let Joe stay, who's not doing his job, that's what you're gonna get. If you let Joe stay, who is disrespecting the people around him, well, that's what you're gonna get. If you let Joe stay, who makes mistakes all the time, that's what you're gonna get. If you let Joe stay and there's a problem with ethics and compliance in your organization, then you're gonna need to hire 2 more ethics and compliance officers. You get what you deserve based on the decisions that you make.
Yeah, and so often what I see is that you maybe let Joe get away with what he needs to get away with, but you tend to ride the other horses until the other horses get so exhausted they end up leaving the organization.
Well, yeah, but Joe's a golfing buddy, so you treat him differently. Or Jane's hemline is a little bit shorter, so you treat her differently. Or someone went to a different school, or they have a different color skin, or their weight is different. And so what happens is leaders bring all kinds of bias into their organizations. And when they do that, then accountability is out the window as well.
Sam, it is hard to believe we are about at the end of our show, and I feel like we have just scratched the surface on accountability. But there's 2 questions left I want to ask you. Number 1 is, how do people find out about you? Tell us what book 11 is and what book 12 is. But the bigger question is, what advice do you want to leave for our audience? As people are sitting out there listening and they're wondering, how do I create an accountable culture? How do I myself become more accountable?
Great. All right. Make this real easy. First of all, in addition to hundreds of free articles and videos, if you go to samsilverstein.com, you can find out all about me as a speaker, as an author, as an executive consultant. It's all there. If you go to amiaccountable.com, you can take the little personal accountability quiz. It'll start you on that journey. What was the third question, Meridith?
What is your best piece of advice for anybody wanting to be more accountable?
Look, we've talked about a lot of the negative sides of things, of people that aren't doing it right. Bottom line is, we all make a choice every day, and we can choose to be accountable. I would say the best place to start is look at what your values are. Identify your values, know your values, and make sure that you're always aligned with them. If you ever make a decision that accidentally does not align with your values, get it back in alignment. That is going to put you on the course to being accountable. Then look to do that in your organization. And if you need help with that, I have a values worksheet at samsilverstein.com/values worksheet. It's free. It's my gift to you. Get your values aligned with your actions, and you'll be on the right path.
It really sounds like it really all comes down to values. Once you intimately understand your core and you use that as a guiding light, sounds like you're on the journey to more accountability.
That's a big piece of the equation, Meredith.
Thanks, Sam. Really appreciate you joining us today. Go to samsilverstein.com. You are not going to be sorry. There is a lot of good information in there. I happen to think that accountability is just about one of the sexiest words in business today, and it really gets undervalued, underused, and under-implemented. So go to samsilverstein.com to find out more about accountability and the number of books that Sam has written, the information he's got. And join us again here next week. We're going to have another episode of Thriving in Uncertainty, where we'll dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to really feel empowered by uncertainty and turn it into your greatest opportunity. We'll see you next week.